One of the most fundamental messages in the entire Quran, which comes out of Surah Al-Hujurat, which is the 49th chapter in the Quran, and it's the chapter of the Hujurat are the quarters of the Prophet ﷺ's home. And if you look at the surah holistically, it's really a chapter about behavior in the homes and how we treat one another, reminding us not to make fun of one another, to mock one another, not to speak ill of each other. So there's a whole bunch of injunctions about just good character and good behavior. But it ends with the last few verses are really quite extraordinary in summing up something about the human condition. And that is the verse, Ya ayyuhan nasu inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha wa ja'alnakum shu'uban wa qaba'ila lita'arafu inna akramakum 'inda Allahi atqakum inna Allaha 'alimun khabir. So this verse, which is the 13th verse in the 49th chapter, is calling ayyuhan nas, which is all of humanity. So whenever the Quran uses nas, it's talking to everybody, all of humanity. When it speaks to the believers, it says, Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu. But generally, Ya ayyuhan nas is an indication when it's to all of humanity that it's actually a Meccan chapter. So in Mecca, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses all of humanity and gives the message through the Prophet ﷺ. In Medina, then you get the differentiation. Ya ayyuhal ladina kafaru, people that rejected, and then people that accepted. So in this verse, it's all of humanity, ayyuhan nas. So, and in Arabic, the ayyuha is like what they call tanbih. It's a vocative, it's a way of calling people's attention. And then the article of definition there is for totality, all of humanity. So it's saying, oh humanity, oh humankind, oh mankind. Inna, surely, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha. Surely we have created you from a male and a female. So this is a reminder that all of humanity has been created from one male and one female. And in modern biology, they actually have designated these first two, they call them Adam and Eve, based on the biblical idea, because most of these biologists are coming out of Christian or Jewish traditions. So they do call the first two people. And there is a belief now that all of humanity actually did come from two people. So we know from the genetic information that we have a lot of these studies. There was actually a documentary called The Journey of Man, which looked at all of the biological evidence now that they have that we really are all related from the same people. So in that way, we're all the same family. And in the Quran, they're called Banu Adam, this tribe. So one of the things about human beings is that we are tribal by nature. We fall into tribes and we fall into tribal mentalities. So a lot of what's happening today is really tribalism, because it's hard to get out of those ways of thinking. So we tend to think, we otherize people who aren't in our tribe, whether it's an ideological tribe or whether it's an ethnic tribe or whether it's a linguistic tribe or whether it's a class tribe, like a certain elite group, or whether it's an educational tribe. All of these different tribes that make up human beings. But this really is talking also about just pure tribalism. It's reminding people that all of you are part of the same tribe. This is called Banu Adam, the tribe of humanity. And so this is the reminder that we're from dhakar and untha, which is the male and the female. One of the things that Iblis, according to the tradition, is that in the Quran it says that he will continue to compel people until they change human nature. لَأَمُرَنَّهُمْ وَلَا يُغَيِّرُنَّ خَلْقَ اللَّهِ. I will continue to compel them until they actually change human nature. So the fundamental nature of human beings is a fitra nature, principial nature, which has the male and the female. It's called a binary. So this idea of removing these things is is really part of a long-term strategy to confuse human beings. But then it says, وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلًا. So once these two people were created, the male and the female, from them came what the Quran calls shu'ub and qaba'il. So the sha'ab is peoples, and the qaba'il are tribes. And the mufassirun, the people, the exegetes who actually are scholars that have the ability to really interpret the Quran, which takes many, many years of study, learning, mastering 12 sciences, according to Ibn Juzay. But the scholars differ on this. So some of them say that the sha'ab is, it's bigger than a tribe. So it's a group of tribes that have a common father. So for instance, in Arabia, you have Mudar and Rabi'a are the two dominant tribes. Mudar is the branch that the Prophet ﷺ was from, and then Rabi'a is the branch that Bani Tamim and the people in, not Bani Tamim rather, Rabi'a are the people like Anaza and these people now, like Al-Saud is from the Rabi'a tribe. So these two tribes, Bani Tamim was actually from Mudar. So these two were the dominant shu'ub of the Arabs, and then from them come all the different tribes. And then you have the Yemeni tribes, and their sha'ab was Himyar and Kahlan, and from them come all the different Yemeni tribes. So that's one view. But the other is that the sha'ab is for the non-Arabs, and the qaba'il is for the Arabs or tribal peoples. And I think that's a better way to look at it, that there's tribal peoples. So for instance, the Irish were once a tribal people. They're not really a tribe anymore, but they were once a tribal people, now which they called clans. So in classical English, tribe actually means a group of goats, a tribe of goats. So, but a clan is a group of people who have a common father. So for instance, you were from the O'Leary clan or the O'Connell clan or the O'Connor clan. Then the Connor was the progenitor of the O'Connor clan. That was the original one. So they all know they have the same father. And the Scottish were like that as well. And the French and all these different peoples, they're actually tribal people. But over time, the tribalism dissipated, and they formed into shu'ub, like peoples. So now you have the Irish people. They don't really see themselves as clannish anymore, even though they have some concept, like the Scottish still do. They have the Highlanders, and some of them will be kilted into a clan and things like that. But they're peoples now. And so the Anglo-Saxons were once tribal peoples. They're not anymore. In fact, a lot of the names that they have are things like Smith, which is from actually what they did. That's actually occupational job. Or carpenter. So you have like John Carpenter. That's because one of their ancestors was a carpenter. And many, many examples like that. So European peoples used to be tribal. Now their tribes have diminished greatly. So you still have like Laplanders. So if you go, there's Aboriginal Europeans, that like in Finland, the people, the Laplander peoples and things like that. Or if you go into places like Greece, you still have families like that are almost tribal. They're clannish. But overall, tribes have been eliminated in the West. Whereas if you go to Africa, where I live, for instance, in West Africa, tribes are still very much a central part of the way they live and experience the world. And there are great advantages to that, but there's also extraordinary downsides. One of the great advantages of it is that there's a type of social welfare. So just like families will take care of themselves, tribes will do this also, so which is a much larger family. So they actually help each other because they're from the same tribe. The downside of it is you'll find very often that they really look down on the other tribes. So each tribe will think they're superior to the other tribe. And one of the things that I got very good at doing was distinguishing between different tribal groups based on physiognomy. But if I made a mistake, because I used to test myself and say, oh, you're from Yoruba, or you're Igbo, or you're Hausa, or you're Fulani. And if I was wrong, they'd get really upset. So I stopped doing it because they would take it as an offense. It's like in Mexico, I once asked somebody if he was an Indian, Indio from Mexico, and he was offended by it. Because unfortunately in Mexico, a lot of Mexicans look down on the Indians. In fact, when the Spanish ruled Mexico, and they still do, I mean, people don't see the Mexicans as Spanish, but actually the most of the people that are in power in Mexico are actually Europeans. They're not natives. But if you look at, in Mexico, they actually had 10 racial classifications to distinguish between people. So this is something human beings do, is that they use these taxonomies as ways of elevating one group over another group. Sometimes this is about class, like very often in a lot of the more industrialized and post-industrial societies, it's class that determines a person's worth. Whereas in previous societies, it had to do with lineage and where you were from. So what this verse is doing really is telling people that we made you shurub wa qaba'il. We made you, God did this, made you into different nations and tribes, lita'arafu, in order that you might come to know one another. In other words, the reason for this is to create these distinctions so that you can actually benefit from one another, the different gifts that have been given to different peoples.